Let me know where we're going. Oh, it says recording paused here. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to anyone who's joined us for this Q&A session around the annual plan. It's quite exciting for me that we're able to use a lot of new methods to talk with the public about what's really important and how they can share their voice across this planning and therefore shape their city. So I'm just going to do a brief introduction with some key points about the annual plan. Then I will introduce my team of councillors and some of the staff that are on board. We have some questions that were sent in earlier so that we can use those to start off with, and we'll get questions as we go, and presumably someone is looking at those and going to tell me when they can come in. So the annual plan is a plan that we develop every year, which sets out the budget and plans and priorities for the year ahead. And usually that is a very straightforward exercise. We've got the long-term plan that sets out the strategic direction, the long-term vision of council over a 10-year span. And then each year against that long-term plan, we look at where we're going for the following year, just to make sure that we're on track. However, that was all before COVID-19. And since COVID-19, we've had to really stop and relook at the way that we do our annual plan. And we're not alone in that, because councils all around the country are in the same situation where everything we thought would happen in this upcoming year has changed because of COVID. So we're looking at this plan as a back on track COVID-19 recovery plan, how we help Hamilton recover from this challenge that we found ourselves in post-COVID, and we set ourselves up for future success. So in this plan, let me just highlight a couple of things that we're proposing to help get the city back on track. This includes $7.3 million worth of savings that we've looked very carefully for, and $1.1 million of support for ratepayers, businesses and community groups that are struggling with the effects of COVID-19. We've pushed back the start date of a number of projects, but we're pushing some projects on, $300 million worth of projects to stimulate Hamilton's economy. And this is all around future possibilities of jobs, of course, in the short term, and building a strong, robust economy for Hamilton into the long term. So we've removed a few projects and we put a few projects in, and we can talk about those later through the questioning. All councillors may have something to say on those. Democratically, we've reached a decision to continue with our proposed 3.8% rates increase. Now, this is not a new rates increase. This is the rates increase that was in fact forecast in the long-term plan. Now, we had a look at it. We had a lot of robust discussion about how we might be able to soften the impact of rates on the ratepayer for this year. But we've come out with the 3.8% rates increase as the starting point, not to say that we won't be able to identify further savings. So those are the main changes that we've proposed in the annual plan. On our website, you'll see a list of the projects that are in and the projects that have been put back a little bit to save us some money. I'm going to introduce my colleagues that I can see here on the call and invite them also to share with you any views on the annual plan, but they'll also be handy to answer any questions. So I'm just going as I see them on my screen. It might not be the way that you see them, but we've got Councillor Maxine Van Oosten.
Kia ora, and thank you, Mayor Paula. Thanks for the opportunity in this really new way to be able to reach out to our public and involve them in our decision making as well. And I think it's really important for people to remember that this is an opportunity for all to have a say on what they think the City Council should be prioritising and making most important. And so, you know, your views are really critical. There's a couple of things in there that are really important to me as a brand new councillor, and that's about making sure that we cut our cloth according to our spending, and so our budget. So it's important that we, especially in the post-COVID situation, that we take account of that. And I think that this budget absolutely takes that into account and mitigates the kinds of changes that we've had to make. So thank you for that, and I look forward to talking to you more this afternoon. Thanks.
Thanks, Max. Deputy Mayor Taylor, did you want to say anything this time or leave it?
Very briefly. Thanks, Mayor Southgate, and hello, everyone. Likewise, I'm looking forward to some questions. I won't go through a summary of the annual plan. Mayor Southgate talked about the fact that we arrived at a 3.8% proposed rate rise, but there was a lot of discussion about it, and we're really interested to hear your views on what else we could do. We did make significant operational savings, as well as savings in our capital budget. So there's been a fair amount of pain shed already, and we really did work hard to try and strike the balance there. So we're really keen to hear your views. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And we've got Councillor Rob Pascoe with us today.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. And look, I echo the comments of all three colleagues who have spoken thus far. This is a back on track budget, and I think we have identified where the needs are with the COVID-19 rebuild. We have also some feelers out in some respect that it might not all be over yet. And so we've got to make sure, I think, that our spending is limited so that we're in a position to respond as we go into the next financial year with the appropriate spending that we think our community will need. There is some spending in this budget, which I think we should have another look at. And this is why I think it's important that we are going out to the community to consult, to see what they feel is appropriate in the current circumstances. And we do have, as Deputy Mayor Taylor has alluded to, the programmed rate increase that's in the 10-year plan. And we have, as he said, had considerable discussion on that. And there may be some opportunity for us to relook at that after consultation if we're able to trim back on some of the spending. So that's all from me at the moment. I look forward to some feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Rob is the chair of the Finance Committee. So he keeps a very close eye on how we're moving around on the budgets. Don't see any other elected members here with us this afternoon, but we do have a number of our key staff from right across the organisation in attendance. So if any of your questions relate to their areas of expertise, we'll certainly draw on them. So it's a bit of a new process for us with Zoom and Facebook Live. So bear with us if it's a little bit lumpy at times, but we're going to do our very best to navigate through your questions. And actually, very usefully, the first question I'm going to share is from Sheena, who said, why is Hamilton City Council, councillors, unable to support a zero rates increase for 2021? There are many cost reductions available in the back on track budget that would enable a rates freeze for 1 year only. So as we go, we are going to respond to those questions that pop up on Facebook. But I might just take a little go at that question to start with. We did come under, the whole of New Zealand, all councils came under considerable pressure to freeze rates post-COVID. Having said that, not all councils are in the same situation, and Hamilton, for example, has debt to manage so that we can both continue to invest in projects and our debt doesn't get out of hand. We're also in the middle of a transition of rates from land value to capital value that we need to continue with. And we've also taken the view that there are many projects coming up over this year that need some investment in them, which will put people into work, to employment, at the same time as meeting the growth challenges of our city. So if we had frozen the rates for even for 1 year, we would have exacerbated the considerable pain that the community is facing at this point in time by extending that out into the future. We felt it was better. The best thing we could do for the community is to get them into work and to start building affordable homes and key infrastructure to set us up for success. So that's the view that council took, and my colleagues can certainly add to that. A number of us pushed to soften the impact of the rates through some operational savings and deferring some projects of a number of years. Having said that, much debate because the value of those projects is so huge to Hamilton. There was a feeling that pushing too far back would just put us back in time where we had to catch up, and that may have been more painful on the ratepayer. The other thing I want to say is that we have actually put in quite a lot of money to supporting businesses, ratepayers and other communities throughout COVID, where we're targeting those most effective rather than having a broad brush approach to rates. But I'll let other councillors have a comment on that, and potentially General Manager David might like to comment also. Is there anybody who would like to comment, councillors? Do you feel I've fairly represented that?
I'm happy to. I'm happy to comment as well, and you other guys, I'm sure, will want to as well. Look, it's a really good question. Was it Sheena? Was it? Yeah, Sheena. Really good question, and certainly I supported a 2.8% rather than 3.8, but totally respected the majority view to go out with a 3.8% rate rise. There are opportunities to pull back further, and I guess my view is that with COVID, the implications of COVID still coming, and America on its knees and Europe in real trouble, there are really tough economic times ahead, and so I did want, and I do want to acknowledge that in this budget, that it's not business as usual. So I would like to see it still come down. I also respect the view of my colleagues who reminded me that if that we're already running a big operating deficit because of COVID, and the more we cut back, the bigger that deficit gets and the bigger problems it causes ratepayers in the future. And you'll remember 2 or 3 years ago, we had to put the rates up by almost 10%, and that was for the same sort of problem, basically. So it's really, it's a really tough one, and it's very hard. I don't know how we could possibly have done a zero rates rise without really causing huge problems in the future. One of the issues is that the city is really committed to a lot of growth on all fronts, in the south in Peacocks, and the east in Ruakura, and north in Rototuna, and the west in Rotokauri. We're growing on all fronts, and it causes a lot of pressure on our books. So very sympathetic to at least taking a % off still, and appreciate your question.
I'll ask Rob to make a brief comment on this one as Chair of Finance.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, from a resident perspective, and this is a personal view, I think that all residents have been affected differently from a financial perspective around COVID-19. Some have had no reduction in income, no loss of jobs, and so forth. And I think a perspective around the council table thus far has been to look at how we could offer help and assistance to those who are affected, whether they're individual residents or businesses in the city. And I think that should still be our target at this particular point in time. I agree with Deputy Mayor Jeff. There are some areas of spending that we could still push back on, and some feedback from residents on that during this consultation process would be helpful. We know when we did this current long-term plan on which we based the 3.8% rate increase each year over the 10 years, we got a very definite thumbs up to maintaining and improving service delivery. And I have a worry now that if we went back to a zero rate increase, even for 1 year, we would have to look at pulling back on some of those services. And it's a really hard challenge to know which ones go first.
Thank you. Rob, have you got anything to add, Max, or we'll move to the next one?
Look, only to say that these decisions are never easily made, but that I think the deliberations that happened took into account a support package for those most affected, and I think that that's a really responsible thing, and city showing that they're doing that is really important. The other aspect that we also need to take into account is that we can then are also in a really good position to be able to afford to borrow, and that will be important if we're successful in some of those stimulus packages that government are discussing. We'll need to be in a really strong position in order to be able to raise our share of any of that stimulus package. So I think we're asking Hamilton if we're doing the right thing here, because we've taken a lot of moving parts and put them into this one.
It's a great point, Max. The ministers have made it quite clear that if government opens up its books to local government to help stimulate the economy and create jobs, that it expects us to partner with them. So I think you've made a really good point there. David, have we covered everything off that you would expect us to in this question?
Yes, you have. I'm very pleased.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the next question. It's from Leighton, and he says, why are private housing landlords excluded from Hamilton City Council's rate relief? And I know I'm not the best person to answer that. So who would be the best person to answer that?
Mayor Paula, maybe if I jump in first.
Sure.
It's David Bryant here, General Manager Corporate, look after the rates and revenue team. Listen, so council's not privy to tenancy information. So council's relationship is solely with the property owners of the city.
Yeah.
So as the ratepayer, they're ultimately liable for the payment of rates. So our relationship is with those who own property, and so those rate rebate structures have been put in place to support the property owner. So as I say, tenancy information, we don't know the relationship between landlord and tenant, or how long the tenancy is, and we have no way to enforce whether or not those rates benefits are passed on to the tenants. So our focus is on the ownership of the property.
Thank you, that's very clear. Anybody want to add to that? No, I think that's all we can say on that one, but we do generally hope that landlords will pass down some of their savings or otherwise onto their tenants. Next question is from Helen. With shovel-ready projects being prioritised and the need to refocus resources after lockdown and the physical and mental impact of COVID, how much is HCC prepared to relook at the worth of the municipal pools for our city? In particular, recognising the value of it for all who work and visit our central city, who live on the east side of the river, and of course for local schools. Who would like to talk to that one? Jeff.
Thank you for the question, and you're going to get an honest answer. I'm sorry, I think that ship has sailed. We have put off demolition for a year in the proposed plan, really to give us a chance to plan what will go in there instead. The pools were too far gone. They're structurally a real mess. They leaked terribly. I think the whole pool emptied itself every 10 days. They're unsafe. They're an earthquake risk, and I'm sorry, it would just be a multi-million-dollar job, I think, to turn that around. And I think, I'm really confident that the best thing we can do for the city now is demolish them and come up with a plan that excites people. there's no reason why we can't nod to the heritage that's been on that site, and I think we should, and we will. We will not forget it, but I think the best thing we can do is start afresh.
Yeah. So Helen, just to let you know that through the long-term plan, big projects can be proposed to council for consideration for funding. Jeff's right, to create a completely new swim experience would be quite an expensive proposition, but that's not to say it couldn't happen if the community were willing and we could get some partners and funding partners around it. So the best you can do is to promote that for the council's consideration in the long-term plan. It's not in the annual plan, except that Jeff is right. We've deferred the demolition while we have another look at it. You know, everything has to be paid for. So while I'm not opposed to a new concept for that site whatsoever, and I know that Deputy Mayor Taylor is looking at the CBD revitalisation, we have to be mindful of everything that Ratepayers wants must be funded. Rob, did you want to say something?
Yes, I was just waving at my daughter who's just walked in. Yeah, look, we're not sitting on our hands at the moment around pools. I understand the shortage of lane space and swimming facilities in the city, and we're working very hard around options in the north of the city. We're working, and we've got some plans with the university around, you know, potential redevelopment of the pool and other sporting facilities at the university. There's already discussion, or there has been discussion about, you know, further development at Waterworld. So look, it is a moving feast, and we'd welcome discussions, as Mayor Paula has said, as we move towards the long-term plan discussions as to, you know, that kind of development and where it should be, you know, and I think having partners involved adds to our ability to provide first-class facilities.
Maxine.
Look, and just to kind of round the discussion off, we all love swimming, and we want our children to be competent in the water and around the water. We're in a river city, and you know, that's really important to us. But it's the municipal pool hasn't come up in the annual plan discussion, but it can be a part of a discussion around the long-term plan, and you know, what happens with that site where there may be other pools, etc. And so you know, the conversation isn't over. There's an awful lot more to be had around there, and there will be many other opportunities for Hamiltonians to discuss it.
Thank you, absolutely. And so let's move to a different question. We've got a question from Lauren, which says, Hamilton unfortunately hasn't yet declared a climate emergency. However, COVID-19 does not mean that the climate crisis has gone away. In what ways is the council ensuring that urgent emission reductions and the preservation of biodiversity are integrated into our recovery at every level? Which is also a very good question. And in respect to that, I've just got back from the Zone 2 meeting where all of the councils across the Central North Island come together to discuss, and the President of Local Government NZ, David Cull, addressed that very question and acknowledged that no, the climate crisis has not gone away, and whoever is re-elected into government in September, or whatever that government looks like, will still be strongly focused on climate mitigation. And it is about how we do our business better through the lens of climate. The biodiversity is a very important part, dear to my heart, of course. We're still waiting on the government to go through the NPS, National Policy Statement on Biodiversity, and make it quite clear to councils across the country what standards they should be achieving through biodiversity. But we've got a very good opportunity through our new growth areas in the city to get win-win, to build climate sensitive communities, to incorporate the best technology. We've done a lot of work about our own business, Hamilton City Council, to look at what our footprint is and how we address that. And the next bit of work around the Climate Action Plan is to look at what Hamilton as a city needs to do and who can be responsible for what actions, because my personal view is that we should play our part, but Hamilton City Council can't afford to fix the whole problem itself, but it can work in partnerships, it can be an enabler. Maxine, do you want to make a comment on that one?
I've got nothing more to add, Mayor Paula. I think you've done a really good job about that. Our action plan through the Environment Committee is designed to be able to capture up the actions and things that the city can be doing, both as a Hamilton City Council and wider. And so I think that that's a really good beginning and a place to start with some clear and evidenced actions that can be taken. So, yeah.
General Manager Lance, do you want to add something to this? Put you on the spot, of course, but he might. Yes, there he is.
Sorry.
Hello.
Just unmuting myself. Hi everyone, I'm Lance Vervoort, General Manager of Community. No, I think you've covered it well. I think there's plenty of opportunity for council going forward to look at these things. We're going to have a plan in place for that, and I think there's plenty of opportunity for the community to give its views and also have some involvement in the development of this going forward. So I think we're well placed. I'd probably use the word poised, and I think there's a real opportunity not only through the annual plan, but also through the long-term plan to get some real clear direction going forward and some real tangible actions.
Thank you. And to take a question from someone different, but we've got some more questions from the same questioners we'll come back to. So Marie asks us, can you look at not implementing the living hourly wage for contractors and maybe only hire companies that already pay this rate? It's a good question. It's not one I could really answer. General Manager David, is this something that you could mention?
I could add to the conversation. Of course, it's a council decision on what they want to pay contractors, etc. So all I would say is that there are many things that we look at when we procure services to support council. So of course, it's possible that this could be one of them. Depending on the services we're looking to procure, we need to make sure that we weigh this up with regard to the types of quality of services that we can get access to as well.
I think it's just a little different way of slicing the pie to say, well, we would only look at contractors who already were paying the living wage or a fair wage, rather than require it for a mechanism. Interesting thought. Maxine, you're very much a fan of the living wage. Would you like to say something?
I absolutely do. And it's a fair rate. It's a rate that's been used to calculate what a worker needs to be able to pay for their, have a decent life and to be able to participate in society. And why wouldn't any city want that, not just for its contractors, but for its own staff as well? In terms of council's own staff, there is a proposal in the annual plan this year to do that. It's costed out at 350 odd thousand, and that sounds like a big number until you do some comparisons with the other spending that we do, and actually when you look at the impact that it can have on people's lives, and that Hamilton needs to be seen as being a fair employer, and that includes paying a fair wage as well. So of our 1,200 staff, really there's only a very few that are impacted by that. So it's a really good thing for councils to be thinking about and doing, and something that we want to hear from you all about your support or not of that proposal. But it's
and that's a good point, because these are all this is our draft annual plan. You're going out for consultation, and you as the public get to say whether we've struck the balance right. In fact, there was quite a lot of conversation on this very topic. Do either of my other colleagues want to say anything on that? Jeff?
Thank you, Mayor Southgate, and look, very respectful of Maxine's views on it, and I hold a slightly different view in that we as a council we have a minimum wage which is higher than the national minimum wage. We have our own minimum wage of $20, and the council made a decision a couple of months ago to pay all our contractors that minimum wage, and I don't actually support that. I actually think that's a bit of a luxury in the economic times that we're in, and I also don't support us paying our employees the living wage at the moment. For me, yes, there's fairness for employees, but and contractors, but there's also fairness for ratepayers, and I just think it's a bit of a luxury at the moment. And I do take particular exception to us paying contractors more than we need to for a contract price, because we think they should be paying their staff more. I don't think that's our role.
So as you can see, we have some pretty robust debate on council, and that's a good thing because it means that all issues get tested. And now it's your turn to speak. Do you want to say anything on this, Rob?
Yeah, just very briefly, I probably join Jeff's camp here with respect to Maxine's view. Look, my main concern is about the timing. It's one of these costs where we should be pushing back, given the financial uncertainty that we're in and what is ahead of us. It will cost a lot more than the 353,000 that we've been advised, and of course that's why all the future years are shown as unknown. So it is one of those areas, and I'm looking forward to the feedback from residents, because it is one of those things at this particular point in time we should be cutting our cloth and paying what the market's paying. And thank goodness that we will, or hopefully will be able to continue to offer secure jobs to our employees, because it ain't looking too good out there at the moment.
No.
I wonder, Mayor Paula, if I could
I don't want to actually get this into a debate. Everyone's had a chat on it, but I just want to make a factual correction, just so we're clear with the public. The annual plan proposal is matching the living wage for staff only. So the 353,000 is for staff only. Actually, at this time, the cost for contractors is unknown. So, but as you can see, good robust debate, and we really look forward to your proposal, your submissions. Yeah. Let me go to some different.
Mayor Southgate, we could have another vote now on it, maybe.
No, I don't think
that would progress us. I'm really keen to hear what the public have to say.
Yeah, and I think just a point of clarification around that, we have noted in the paperwork that the cost of it is $353,000, but that was also taking into account a 2.5% pay increase that was added to staff. That wouldn't be happening, and so in fact the $353,000 is reduced by $86,000, so it's less than $250,000.
Okay, thank you for that. You snuck a naughty one in there.
I know.
Let's move to a different topic. Lance says, I see you're looking to increase commuter parking spaces. Shouldn't we be more focused on better public transport options or more affordable parking building rates? Now, I know my colleagues are all going to have a view on this one. So I'm going to kick off with Deputy Mayor Taylor, because parking in the central city in particular has been part of his portfolio.
Thank you, Ms. Southgate. Good question. Yeah, look, to me, it's a question of balance, and it's a question of transformation in terms of the city. Yes, public transport is obviously something we need to emphasise, but don't throw away commuter parking and cars overnight, because it's not going to work. In terms of our evolution as a city, I would liken us to a teenager at the moment. We're not in Amsterdam. We're still a reasonably car-centric provincial city of around 170,000 people. Let's not pretend we're Amsterdam or something like that, because we're not. So it's got to be a phased. It's got to be a slow process, not something we do tomorrow. And so at the moment we need both, and we'll need both for some time, I think.
Thank you. I know there'll be some different views on this. I will say, because we're lacking the councillors in charge of transport here today, but I will say that we have been strongly focused as a city on modal shift. Jeff is right, we do love our cars here in Hamilton, that's absolutely right. But we have a bigger piece of work around how do we shift people out of their private vehicles onto forms of public transport. Of course, we've got the commuter rail proposition coming later this year. We're looking at increasing cycling and walking opportunities around our city. And we've got a very exciting project that the government's looking at potentially for stimulus funding around the 20-minute city, which means that 20-minute city hubs, which means that from where you live in your part of the city, you should be able to walk or cycle 20 minutes to get everything that you need. So it's about villages that function within the wider city. I'm simplifying that, but the key point is that we have the concept to start moving people to modern forms of transport. Rob, would you like to say something on this one?
Yeah, look, thank you, Mayor Paula. I'd like to see us find practical ways to incentivise public transport. I notice the buses in my suburb are constantly empty, and they could be full, and if there were more people using buses, there'd be less cars needing to be parked in and around cities and at workplaces. But I don't think we're particularly good, and when I say we, not just Hamilton, not just Waikato Regional Council, not just councils around the country, but we're not particularly good in finding the ways that gets people into buses and out of cars. So look, I'm keen to look at the ways that we can do that. But I agree with Deputy Mayor Jeff. We can't just close our roads off or our bridges off and make them cycle bridges or bus bridges, because we are reliant on the economic activity that comes from vehicular transport. And, you know, I can't see supermarkets being stocked up from the back of push bikes and so forth. So we need, and we will need to have roads for cars for quite some time to come. But look, there's opportunities there. Let's find them.
Yeah, I think our wonderful young councillor, Sarah Thompson, does her supermarket shopping just that way in a backpack on her bike. But yes, taking the point that, you know, we still have some reliance on vehicles. Let's, Maxine, you want to add to that one quickly or go on to the next questions?
Oh, look, I just one comment at the end of it. It's entered into the annual plan because we needed to find some income, some additional income. We've taken a bit of a hit, as have a lot of businesses in Hamilton with our fees and services. And so you have to look everywhere to be able to find where you can increase a bit of revenue. And that was done based on really good data that told us where the spaces were being used, where they were less used in the city. And so, I mean, that's how it's entered into the annual plan. I like the way this resident is thinking though, because I do support that modal shift. I own a bike and a car, and I have a bus card, and I'm looking forward to the new B card. So, and finding ways to get our residents using them, is great. What we do know though is that if you provide a more frequent service, if you provide a service that gets you to the place that you want to go to first, then people will use buses. And so there's a lot more analysis that needs to be happening and support of it in the future as well. And, you know, let's build those bike paths, and I look forward to that 20-minute city stimulus package being ticked off at government.
Thank you, Max. Got the number of other questions rolling in, so I'm going to take them quite quickly, but also just get two councillors to speak to each in this instance so we can get through these really good questions. So Sam asks us, or Sam says, there's not much proposed for the city centre. What's happening here? And fairly, I'm going to allow Jeff to kick this off because he runs the Central City Advisory Group.
Thank you, Ms. Southgate. Thanks for the question. What we've got planned for the Central City is something that's going to our long-term plan, which is next year. The annual plan is not really for those big sorts of projects. And so we are doing a lot of work. We're doing a central city plan refresh, which looks at transport, it looks at parking, it looks at all sorts of things to revitalise the central city. And part of that work you will have heard of is on the riverside, in terms of that whole area from the museum, from Ferrybank and the museum, to the new theatre, and up to Victoria on the river, and joining that area, you know, with the hotels and the casino, and linking it with nice boardwalks and walkways and pedestrian and cycleways, and just making it a really cool place to be, and a place where people want to visit and where they want to stay. So that's part of it, and there is a lot actually going on in the central city, and so we've got an advisory group working really hard on that plan, and as we develop in the next few months, we'll be going out to the community to seek views on it. So rest assured, there is lots going on, but you won't hear about it straight away.
Thank you, Jeff. And actually, we have submitted to government in our proposals for their funding quite a lot of work in the CBD to connect the back of the museum right up to Victoria on the River, and some additional money into the Waikato Regional Theatre. So there again, fingers crossed, if we're able to get some government money into the CBD, we'll see things happen at pace and we'll make more progress. We've also got a couple of projects around innovating streets, where we're looking at improving pedestrian and cycling options in the CBD through a different pocket of government money. So we are still focused on making our CBD as vibrant and thriving as it possibly can be, doing a little work to support the business community at the moment, because obviously we're aware that the hospitality sector in particular has taken one of the biggest hits. And that's somewhere where we need to work closely with those businesses to draw people back into the heart of our city and spending some money in local restaurants and cafes. I've got another question, so right up your alley, Councillor Pascoe. Tracy asks us, what can we as ratepayers do to support council in making efficiencies and taking some load off the basic services? And I think that's an interesting question, because it talks to, do we have to do everything, or can we enable the communities do things and therefore take some pressure off us? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, there are lots of things that I think residents can do to make us act more efficiently, and, you know, to let us know when work needs to be done in their areas, rather than have our people locate those and have to do them significantly with significant delays. But I guess we often, particularly in terms of the long-term plan, we're constantly looking for ways where, you know, user pays might become a more efficient way of service delivery, rather than having those costs charged through rates and becoming very efficient for families that do things differently. And I think of rubbish collection for a start. You know, there are lots of families who recycle themselves, who use compost bins and so forth, and therefore reduce the amount of rubbish that our contractors collect from the gate. Of course, we charge through our rates, you know, the whole collection service. So, yeah, there are ways that, and ideas that come back from our residents could tell us what we could do more efficiently than the way that we currently price and deliver services.
Thank you. Maxine, you want to say anything to this one?
Oh, golly. Not really. I don't think I've got anything to add. Thanks, Rob. I think as a council, though, we do have a responsibility to provide the core services to our residents, and that's what they're expecting, but that's at a cost, and that you know, we make those costs really clear in this budget and in our long-term plan. And so if people want to have a look at that, both of those are online, and I see that I got mine wrapped around the Hamilton Press this week, so is that resource ready and waiting for people to give their feedback?
I think the key point here is that council is very willing to enter into partnerships with groups or with the general public to be more efficient and effective. And if you have a good idea around that, we'd love to hear from you. I think one of the best working examples of that would be gully restoration, where nothing would happen without the many, many volunteers that we enable. So certainly keen to hear from you. I'm going to go to another question. Amitesh, I hope I've said that right, says, can you explain what you're proposing at the gardens with the closure of the nursery? What does this mean for visitors and what is the impact? I'm going to ask General Manager, oh, there you are. I was going to ask General Manager Lance and he popped up. So it's good. Perfect.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. So Amitesh, we aren't looking at closing the nursery per se. It's actually the glass houses that, which are adjacent to the nursery. So they're at the end of their life. So they're assets which are, if you have a close look at them, are getting very near their end of their life. In the proposal for the Hamilton Gardens management plan, we're looking at a roadway that goes just to the south of the nursery itself and then goes into the Gate 2 car park. So that means those glass houses get cut off from the rest of the gardens essentially by a road. And in the new proposal for Hamilton Gardens and the gardens down below, there will be some new glass houses in the Pacifica garden as part of the development. So these things being end of life, we're saying that there's actually an efficiency there of saving some money, and there will be a new glass house in the new development down below. So we think it's probably an opportune time to explore that with the public and hear people's views on that. What does it mean for visitors? It would mean that those glass houses would close. We would find new homes for the plants that are in there. We will definitely have a lot of takers for those. We're talking to the Auckland Botanic Gardens around the cacti collection, and also there's a bunch of other plants in the Victorian glass house, which has the black and white checkered floor. Most of those are potted and they can be removed reasonably easily, and we would find new homes for them.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that covers that off. We are getting quite a few little questions, and I want to save Jeremy's question for last, just before we finish at past. So I'm coming back to that question, Jeremy. But Stephen asks, what stage is the regional theatre at? Who's the right person to tell us this?
I can perhaps start, Mayor Paula. I'm working with the governance group at the moment on a contract between Hamilton City and the governance group at Momentum Waikato to look at how we might fund our share of the contribution. The project has got resource consent, and it's obviously been delayed for a month or 6 weeks because of the shutdown, but they're getting ready now to work through the various funding options so that they can start. August was the pre-COVID construction start time, and I think that's moved out now to about October. I'm not sure whether Sean
here.
Yeah, Sean Murray's here, so perhaps he could continue and fill in the gaps that I might have missed.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rob. Yes, Sean Murray here. I'm General Manager for Venues, Tourism and Major Events. Look, the project is full steam ahead. It is in its final throes of its planning requirements. They're looking, as Councillor Rob said, to commence the actual build in October this year with a completion date 2 years following that. So pretty exciting that it's finally coming to fruition. They do still have some funding that they need to raise, but they have raised the bulk of the funding, and it's just the last tranche that they're having to do. So it's going to be a big project for the city. It's going to be a big injection into the central city coming up, and from a council perspective, it's fantastic that another organisation is leading the charge with this project and raising the bulk of the money as well. So council's input is around 1/3 of the total cost. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you. I think that's done a good job at that question. We have a question from Edward. Are there plans for commuter rail in the long term? And the answer to that is yes, and I'll let Max tell you a little bit about that if you'd like to, Maxine.
Well, I haven't got all of the details, but certainly our commuter rail from Hamilton to Auckland is well underway. There's a station being built out behind the base, and that's progressing really nicely. There'll be a fully usable, accessible toilet there for all of our residents to be able to use. And we're working on further efficiencies for the future in there. Actually, you're going to be able to get all the way into Papakura and then transfer on to other parts of Auckland from there. So it's a fantastic and long fought and hard fought for initiative, and it's going to really help to connect Hamilton to Auckland and hopefully the other way around, actually, because we're a pretty good place to visit, and with more and more New Zealanders staying home for their holidays, there's going to be some real opportunity to bring people into Hamilton in a pretty efficient kind of a way, actually. So it's there is a start date, and it's not on the top of my
September.
My mind.
Who can give us the exact? Does anybody know the exact start date? I don't have it to hand. No, but it is quite surely that we see the fledgling passenger rail service starting. We're also having some fantastic conversations through a plan called H2A, which is Hamilton to Auckland. Could be A to H, like Max says, but it's H2A at the moment. And we're having a lot of conversations with Auckland about how we can connect better into their transport system with view to taking rail out to the airport, for example. So there's a lot happening in this space. Unfortunately, we don't have Dave McPherson, who knows the details inside out and back to front with us today, but I'll make sure we get a full answer to you. Jeff.
Just adding to that, I think long term also the possibility of commuter trains, Te Awamutu, Cambridge, and possibly even Morrinsville as well, in the long term, sort of 10, 20 years sort of thing.
That's right. So we are looking at rapid transport across.
Metro rail across the city, I'm told.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for that. Early November, we've been just corrected. So thank you for that correction. We have another good question to round up on, but we will get to everyone's questions online. And I'll say a few words to wrap up in a minute. But Jeremy has asked us, what project are you most excited about that is planned for the next 12 months? And I'll give everybody a little say on that, starting with you, Rob.
Yeah, look, I'm excited about the theatre. I think that's been sitting around for the last 1.5 terms of my involvement with council, and it is really good now to see events starting to unfold where we have dates, where we've got a building contractor who's undertaking the job, and we'll start to see some piles go down in Victoria Street South over the next 9 to 12 months. So that's an exciting project for Hamilton, in my mind.
Maxine.
Oh, look, for me, it's got to be the 20-minute city. I've got my fingers, toes all crossed, hoping that government can see the value of that for Hamilton and for our residents. Involved in that project is School Link, which goes right along Peach Grove Road and connects up 6 to 8 schools, and really makes it safe for children to be able to get out of home and cycle to work under their own pedal power, scooter power, walking power, and it really gives them the freedom to be getting themselves to school. It'll also get mums and dads out of cars, hopefully on that school trip, and that I think that's nothing but good for our city. Another part of that is the walking and cycling bridge across from Memorial Park to round about the museum, and a fantastic way for cyclists and pedestrians to get themselves from the east over into the city to work, or the other way around to recreate. And you know, and another part of that is the link through to the cycling link through to the university, through parks, some of our parks in Hamilton, and using some really creative ways in order to be able to get their way around.
Being so passionate, I'm going to have to chop her off. So that,
that's right. Thank you.
So that Jeff gets to have a say as well. Jeff.
Thanks, Mayor Southgate. Great question. Turning around Victoria Street to enjoy our waterfront at last, and our waterfront is the Waikato River. Linking Victoria on the river, which I think opened up everybody's eyes about how we can engage better with our river, what amazing views we can get from up high on Victoria Street, or near Victoria Street. Linking Victoria on the river with the theatre, linking it with the museum, and as Maxine said, linking it with an amazing pedestrian cycle bridge from the museum across to the Spitfire in Memorial Park. You know, to me, that is just incredibly exciting. And I just think it will make our city, that will just make our city. People will love it, and Hamiltonians will be really proud of it.
Thank you. And I was a bit conflicted between one of the things I thought was the most important and one of the things that is a passionate place for me, a passionate project for me. The most important is, of course, just making sure that we deliver affordable housing. So as we grow our city outwards and upwards in the city, we need to make sure that a fair proportion of those homes are affordable to most people. But in terms of passionate, I am passionate about the Lake Waiwhakareke and zoo enhancements, because that's a legacy project that will do wonderful things for the natural environment that it has already done. So if you've never been for a walk around that special space, please do, because that used to be bare cow paddocks, and it's now one of the most thriving ecosystems that we've got in the city. So that's exciting. And if we can hook it across to, I'm sure you'll agree that the parking outside the zoo and everything is a bit of a nightmare. We need to improve that. We need to improve the cafe so the locals can attend the cafe. We need to improve the education centre at the zoo, because it's a very well-loved tourism destination, domestic tourism destination. And if we give it a little bit of extra love, I believe we're going to get more people coming and spending a night in Hamilton to enjoy the riverside, as the Deputy Mayor Taylor has said, but also go and visit our fantastic zoo and our fantastic restoration project. So that's the note I'm going to leave on. I'm just going to thank everyone else for their questions that we didn't get to, one or two of them, but we will answer them. And just thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking the time to have to ask those questions. Now we're inviting you to have your say. So you've heard from us, but please do take time to go on to the website, which is www.hamilton.govt.nz/annual plan. I did that quite well. So go on to that website and have your say. Share your voice, shape your city. We look forward to seeing you at the next session of these, because it went very quickly. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff.